Get a motion that the closed meeting be closed, and the board member certifies that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting to which this certification applies, and only such business matters as were identified in the motion concerning the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. Honeycutt and a second from Ms. Garner. Roll call.
Mr. Rickey?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Hunter?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Sturgeon?
Yes. Mr. Nichol, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sturdivant, members of the board. Tonight is a work session for us, and it's also a night for us to finalize several of the items that need to be wrapped up for the end of the year. Some personnel issues, some financial issues, and then some things to prepare at the end of the year for the July 1st of the next year's meeting. The first thing that I want to go over with you are data that we have collected from the last school year to show the progress that has been made through the year, to show where we are as we launch into a new accountability. We talked at one of our most recent work sessions about the fact that there will be new accountability this coming year. I handed out the data. There were several comments from members of the board about the way the data was presented, so some of it has been updated. I don't know. It can take a long time to go through the data, or it can take a short time to go through the data. But you've had a chance to see it, so I just want to sort of go through it quickly and see if you have comments related to it. So if you will.
Can we, would somebody just cut that one light out so it's not a glare right there, please? Yes, ma'am, that's great. Thank you. Ms. Rogers.
So obviously from our previous years with the focus only on SOLs and knowing that the SOL testing is still going to be something that will be looked at, one of the items, we've listed the elementary and the middle school and high school SOL results. They ended up being very good. Remember that these are preliminary because until the state does all of their work with them, and that comes out usually September, October, we don't have the final results. But the data, as we move from preliminary, will go on through to the middle school.
Are the previous year's ones in here somewhere just for comparison's sake?
No. No, I didn't include that. We can get that to you as you
Mr.
would want to
Ritchie, would
see.
you like those? Would you like those to be sent to you as well?
That would be great if I could
Yeah,
do it too.
just to, because I look
Okay.
at that and I'm not sure it might be good or
Just to
may
compare.
not be.
Right. Okay. Right, I understand that. So these are the main thing is that all of them are above the expected state standards.
That's good. Even 63%?
Well, no, that's not above 70.
68 was at La Crosse,
That was-
is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, in Bluestone High School's history is 63, and then there was a lacrosse one score that was in the 60s. History, lacrosse 68.
Where we have those, typically there is, as always, an explanation. We had a really tough time with history teachers at Bluestone last year. So, and then when we look at the 3-year average, which is what the state looks at for overall assessment, then that helped with it. I don't know if either Ms. Rogers or Dr. Scales wants to comment on any of that at this point.
Well, I would just add that right now, history no longer counts towards accreditation. We share the scores here, but in the new accreditation system, it does not count against you, so it will not hurt any of the schools for that history score. So when you look at it from an overall, it will not hurt them as far as accreditation.
Okay.
As far as with history, especially at Bluestone High School, we were short, we had due to personnel matters, we were short 2 teachers toward the end of the school year. One class was actually taught by a substitute in a computer program. But also we had the impact of the reduction of certain students not being able to take the U.S. history test, which are normally your top attaining students. That also impacts the ability because the ones that were testing were some of those students that really needed the test as well. Now, World War History 1, which is a required one for that grade, did well. World History 2 did fine, but most of those students were advanced diploma students that are still in the 10th, 11th, and 12th, 11th grades. And the U.S. history did not do very well, but those were the students that were at that point, a lot of those students have been eliminated because of the new testing requirements. When they had their number, they did not have to test. That definitely impacted us.
Any other questions? We'll get to last year's data. Moving on then, these slides are set to be able to break down according to the different subgroups that we typically report on. And you can see that we have a challenge, as they have challenges all over the state with our special needs population. And you will, but you will see later when we look at reading scores specifically that the whole state is having, nobody met the expectations with special needs all over the state. So
What is the ECDIS?
Economic disadvantage.
Okay, thank you. The yellow one.
yeah. So we're looking at all students, and then you break it down by the different categories that they look for with the guidelines. Moving on, SOL, the career certifications, of course, this is an area that we are really focusing on because this is what the state is going to be looking at more and more, and as we move into the academies, this becomes incredibly important. We do have comparison data here, 2017-18 compared to 2018-19. We had a few less students that were actually taking the test this year, but we had a better completion rate this year than we have had before. We broke that down a little bit more with the CTE, and you can see the different groups divided by the certifications and academies that they're working with. And that gives you somewhat of a sense as well of some of the students that we have. The program for the STEM doesn't have quite as many certifications to be able to work with as we have in some of the others, but they will have more and more along the way. The next one is really an area that we're very pleased with, particularly because we'll be having in July the county being identified as a work-ready community. A lot of that specifically is a result of the student results that we had on the overall career readiness certificate, or what we used to know as our Work Keys assessment. This is the reading results. When you compare, and I think this is indicative of some of the others, when you look at across the state and you see the percentiles, and this is coming directly from the state, you'll notice that our numbers are higher than the others or equal to or higher than the others in the Region 8. And we feel like with these data for all students, and then as you keep going to the next level, Caucasian students, moving on, Asian students, of course, we don't have very many, but they did very well here. The Hispanic students, we had a very good response from those as well. And of course, we're particularly engaged with the minority students, and that's the next one. The African American students, we were the only one in Region 8 that was not in red. So we're very pleased with that, and of course, we want to be able to keep that up. The next one, I believe, is the disabilities, and that shows the whole state is struggling with that. That's going to be an area that we'll be working on statewide in some degree. Any questions of looking at that piece? All right, moving on then. This is the economically disadvantaged that you'd asked about. Again, ours showed up very well, even though that's an area of concern throughout. We're pleased with how we're working with those. The next one is beginning of our work with the actual reading scores at the elementary level, and I'm going to let Ms. Rogers give us an update on these results. This is one of the areas that we changed from what we gave you at the regular board meeting.
This was a request to look at our pre-K students. You know, the big push from the state has been for pre-K and actually birth to age 5, and making sure that we get those students into a pre-K program if we can. So it was requested that I show some data on the students that we get. And so this is actually kindergarten PALS data, but it is showing by pre-K experience. So basically it's showing those students who came to us and were identified in PALS in the fall of their kindergarten year,
meaning that they did not meet the benchmark, and whether they attended pre-K or did not attend pre-K, or if they went to Head Start, or if they attended a private pre-K. So if you look at these numbers, this really shocked me when I did this data, because I really anticipated that the no pre-K was going to be much higher. And Ms. Bailey actually called me last week and we talked about this a little bit. I'm hoping that this means we're truly reaching our at-risk students in our pre-K program, and that's why, yes, a year of pre-K was helpful, but they were still a little bit behind at the beginning of kindergarten, and we can only imagine what would have happened if they had not come to pre-K at all, if they were identified having had a year of pre-K. So there's no Head Start showing here, and there's no, you have either no pre-K or public pre-K, which is us. So if you look at the next, that's the spring ID students. So they take PALS 3 times a year. In the fall and in the spring, they show up as either identified, meaning that they did not meet the benchmark. So here you can see we did have one Head Start show up at South Hill, and then the no pre-K and the public pre-K. So we're still seeing that those are our at-risk students. So I'm interpreting this that we're doing a good job of reaching those at-risk students. Not all of them, but at least some of them. However, I would like to see that, you know, after having a year of pre-K with us, that things would be even better than this. So there's a lot of work that's going on with pre-K. Our teachers this year took part in the VPI pilot, and they had teachers or professors who came in from UVA and observed their classes and gave them an observation report at the end of the year. We went over that data at the end of the year, and this is going to be an ongoing state-mandated observation that will take place now every 2 years. Every other year, they will be observed by local people, and our principals are getting trained to do this July 21st and 22nd through a grant that we wrote, and then every other year, people from UVA will be coming in. So hopefully through this and through continued professional development, we will strengthen our pre-K program, and hopefully this data will look better in the future. But we still want to make sure that as we're working on our pre-K and getting those students, that we're looking for the most at-risk students to give them that extra year, because if they're still showing up as identified in kindergarten, they definitely need it pre-K. The next one. Do I have the clicker? Will this work? Okay. So this is PALS data. This is from the first grade. They do not do a chart like this in kindergarten. Most of the PALS skills that they are assessing there is whether they know letters and their letter sounds. But when you look here, and I'm sorry, this one's not the updated one, Mr. Nichols, that's my fault. The blue is showing in the spring, and the green, in the fall, and the green is showing in the spring. So you want to see the green columns getting larger, and the codes for the bottom, and I'm sorry, the updated slide did have this. BE means beginning and ending sounds. The DIG are your digraphs. B for blends, short vowels, nasals, your CVCE, your long vowels, and that's all on here. I'm sorry, yes, on here. And so, I'm sorry, I clicked it. I didn't mean to click it. So, when you look at this, we're wanting to see that they are making growth, and that's what this does, and that's what the PALS data tells us, is from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, are they making growth in those skills? And this is in spelling and phonics, and so they have this for first grade, second grade, and then also for third grade. And then the next category for the data looks at the reading growth. So here, this is for first grade. I did the fall. I actually did the numbers so that you could see it a little bit better. In the fall, we had 242 students reading below first grade level, and they were in first grade. In the spring, we only have 91 students reading below. And we went from one student who was at the mid to end of first grade in the fall to now having 158 reading above grade level according to PALS. So I tried to put the numbers in there because sometimes the chart, the bars can be a little confusing. And the letters at the bottom there, first grade on up, those numbers stand for grade levels. Before first grade, they look at 3 levels. It's readiness, primer, pre-primer, and then primer. And that kind of equates to the pre-K kindergarten years. It's not an exact cutoff there, but that's equating to before first grade, meaning that they are below first grade level.
Ms. Rogers?
Yes.
Now, on this chart, we want to see the bars go down?
Well, on this chart, yes, because when they're going down, that means they're moving to the next level. So it's readiness.
But like
this is the lower level of reading. So in the fall, you had 62 students, but you only had 3 at the end, which means some of those 62 moved up to another level.
I can't see what you're pointing
I'm
at.
sorry. I'm sorry. So that some of these numbers here moved to the next level. They may have come to readiness pre-primer, or they may have moved to pre-primer up here.
So but then we
here
go
they're
a little
going
further
up.
to the right, then we want the green to be higher? Or are those bad results?
Well, you want the
Like the
green
two.
to,
What
you
is
want the
two?
green to grow on this end of the chart, because this
Okay,
means that they're.
that's what's confusing.
this-
So on
yeah,
the front
this
end
is
of the
getting to
chart,
be
it's
your
supposed to
upper
go
reading
down.
here, yes.
Okay.
So as it goes this way, and that's why I did the numbers to kind of help out, and I just went in and counted which students were reading above first grade level at the end of the year to give you those numbers. And then did the same thing for second grade reading growth. So again, it's the same situation. You want to see all of the bars moving towards this end. And so if they are getting smaller here, hopefully that means that they're now getting to the higher levels of reading. And so in the fall, for second grade, we had 113 students below, and in the spring, only 26 below. And we had 9 at the mid to end of second grade in the fall, and then it's cut off a little bit here. Let me make sure I'm giving you the right number. It's 12 on grade level and above, I believe, but I can't see.
I think it just says grade level.
12 is on grade level, I'm sorry, you can't see it there, I don't know why it's so crooked. It's actually 200 that are above grade level in second grade. It's just down at the bottom and you can't see that.
Okay.
And then on third grade, same charts, 67 students were below in the fall, 29 below in the spring, and your numbers are a little bit cut off. 48 are above grade level in the fall, and we had 99 above grade level in the spring. So this is all your PALS data here. So the other assessment that we give starts in second grade, and this is your STAR data. And so from here, this is a report that they give us that shows all of the schools. Bluestone showed up here just because they use AR, which is from the same company, but they didn't actually give this test, so that's why they're all gray. But according to this, STAR is saying that we have 73.7% of our students reading at or above grade level, and then another 11% that are that on-watch category. And if you go back to this data with the 200 students that are reading above grade level, that's right at about 80%. So if you compare that to the STAR data, that's pretty close to what the PALS data is saying. So it's good when the two assessments are kind of lining up and giving us similar information. Did you have a question?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I saw what I was looking for.
And then I broke it down by the schools with the numbers, and I'm sorry that you don't have the updated. I will send you the updated PowerPoint that has the percentages as well. But these are the numbers, and I did it because STAR breaks it down by grade equivalent. I did the numbers like this so that you could see, in some cases, students that are reading below may only be 3 or 4 months below. So if you look at this, again, the percentages on the division, the division total over here, we have in second grade, 76, if they're reading 2.5 to 3.0, they took this in about the March-April window, so that's right about on grade level. From 76, 60, and 49, that's 80% of your students reading on grade level according to STAR. And the PALS was saying that it was 73, the other report said 73.7, so it's pretty close. And then if you look at, again, the STAR chart here, in third grade, only 61.7 on grade level and 15% on watch. And when you break it down per school and look at the numbers, again, starting with the 3.6, if you add these numbers up and do a percent, it's about 62% right there. So third grade's still that area that we would love to see all students reading on grade level. I shared this with the principals. They asked that I please let you know that some of these students that are reading, when you look at these that are below, way below, more than a couple years sometimes, those are mostly our identified SPED students. These are the students who are already identified receiving special ed services, but when they take this test, they do not get the accommodations that they would get on every other test, because we want to see what their true reading level is. But on the SOL or any other assessment that they may get, they may have the read aloud capability, they may have someone reading the test to them, because for a lot of them, their comprehension and listening skills are actually very strong, and some of them even pass the SOL test, even reading a couple of grade levels below, because those skills are so strong.
So, Mrs. Rogers, where do you think the disconnect is starting in the third grade? What is the problem there?
One thing we have to remember is that we're looking at two different groups of students. So overall, if you go back and look at this group of students last year, they were weak last year too. They're getting a little bit stronger each year, but the second grade group is a stronger group, and that happens from time to time. We just get groups in that are somewhat stronger or somewhat weaker.
But they're moving up to the third grade. But
some of them, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, some of them do, some of them don't.
Okay.
So they're different cohorts. So
Right, it's a different group of students, so you really can't compare this data to the second grade because it's two
Okay.
totally different groups of
Okay.
students. And then when you look at the fourth grade, again, 58.2 at or above, 16.7 on watch. So if you combine those two numbers, that's how many students are close. They're either on or above, or they're very close. They're in that on watch category. Intervention and urgent intervention means they're receiving some help. They're getting Title I help, reading specialist help, PALS help. They're getting some additional interventions because they are below. And then again, your numbers broken down for you, and I will.
Has La Crosse always been the lower of the elementary schools?
Not always, but in recent years, their poverty has increased. If you look at our schools in highest poverty, it goes Chase City, then La Crosse.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes. Yes, they are second highest in poverty at the elementary level. So again, just according to research, that does play a part in coming to school ready and the readiness skills for reading.
Okay.
And then grade 5 data, again, like I said, 58.7, 20.8. So the bright spot in it is that our second grade group right now looks strong. So next year's third grade group hopefully will be very strong and do really well and continue to grow. Again, you have 58.7 and 20.8. So these are your fifth graders rising to sixth grade. And so these are the students who will be next year, and you've got almost 60 plus another 20. So that's almost 80% that are either at or above or on watch, which means they're not that far behind. And again, when you look at it, when I say they're not that far behind, they're probably the students that are at the beginning of fifth grade, or maybe between the middle to end of fourth grade. So they are the students that are falling into that on watch category.
So it looks like to me, Mrs. Rogers, I mean, again, just from looking at the percentages, we started off really well, and then as each grade level went, we saw a decline, a decline, a decline, a decline, a decline, all the way to the fifth grade. It looks like to me that the numbers should be going up, the percentages should be going up and not going down.
They should. I mean, ideally, that's what we want. And I think we've put some things in place at the lower elementary level that's going to hopefully help with the students coming in and moving forward now. You've got to remember that some of these students maybe were in school before we got the Basel series, before we got some of the programs and some of the initiatives that we've had in the last few years. So they haven't had it the entire time they were at school. And so they maybe, you know, or still have some gaps.
How is the RGR fallen into kindergarten through fifth grade? Is that, are you going to show us?
Kindergarten is, RGR is only for kindergarten, first and second grade.
Right, yes, ma'am, yes.
So if you go back and look, and it's really your spelling and phonics is what RGR focuses on. And so, again, this was first year of implementation. Teachers were new to the program, being trained. I think this is very positive data. They make growth. That's what we want. Can I say RGR was the culprit for this? It's hard to say with only 1 year of data that the growth is attributed to that or not attributed to that. I think the true test will be when the students that were in kindergarten this year and got it in kindergarten get it again in first and get it again in second. When we look at their scores at the end of second grade, hopefully we're going to see a much larger number of students reading on grade level because they will have had a consistent phonics approach for 3 years.
I guess it just concerns me that I see that, instead of us improving, it looks like to me we're each time, each grade level, we're going down a little bit. And that concerns me because, at the end of the day, if our children can't read,
right,
they can't do anything, so.
Well, and keep in mind that those students in the third, fourth, and fifth grade that are getting intervention, some of them are getting corrective reading, some of them are getting the RGR, some of them are getting Orton-Gillingham, which is another intervention program that the state recommends and has trained.
What was the name?
Orton-Gillingham, that is a program that the state has actually put out and trained some of our teachers. They put out every year, and teachers have to apply to even be able to go and get that training. Okay. And we now have someone trained at each of our elementary schools in that program. It's ideally for students who've been diagnosed with dyslexia, but it can help a lot of students. And the RGR program is actually kind of similar and based on the OG philosophy, so it has a lot of the same strategies that they use in OG. But yeah, if you're wanting to look at the RGR impact, you're going to have to look at the K1 and 2 this year, and then, like I said, hopefully the impact will last and be forthcoming down the road for your upper grade levels. Any other questions? I think that was the last slide. Who's next? Is that you? Do you need
Okay. Now, well, I don't know if it'll go from here. Let's see. Yeah. So this is sort of a mixed up piece of data as far as the numbers and whatnot, but it's basically looking at student absenteeism through the year. And this is an area that we're going to be held accountable for. We're just beginning to get from the state how they're going to be looking at counting absenteeism and what we need to qualify, how we will have to be reporting. The most important component of this then is it's all growth measures now. So we're going to, every school, whether they're meeting current benchmarks that the state has or not, they're going to be needing to come up with plans that show growth. When we took this to the administrators at our administrative retreat, the one thing that was very obvious is that February timeline was when we had significant increase in absenteeism, and that's attributed to the flu that we had. And the numbers of students that were impacted, as well as teachers that were impacted by the flu, or whatever it was that was going around at that point. But we will, each of the schools will be looking at that baseline data and then seeing the growth models take place. We also report on the teacher absenteeism. And this is one that we will be looking at putting together some plans and working with you on, because we feel like that's a significant number of teachers that are missing more than 10 days. And we want to find a way of fixing that. We've got some ideas that's going in, but I don't have anything yet to bring to the board as far as a recommendation. And
Mr.
if you have
Nichols.
any comments on that, yes.
Do you have data as it relates to the region? How do we compare with the region or the state?
I do not have that data from the region right now.
So it could be that this is an average.
It could be. It could be. I mean, any way you look at it, it's pretty significant when the teachers not being there is going to obviously have an impact on the students' growth. So, but I will ask and see if I can get that information from other school divisions.
When you say 10 or more days, are these sick days? Are these professional development days? What days?
Professional development days do not count in this. It's sick days, business days, and personal days. And that was one of the areas that the teachers asked us about, because there is a requirement by the state that we have to allow sick days for teachers. And then we have gone ahead and looked at the development of the personal days and the business days. I think that's an area that the teachers are wanting us to look at too. By and large, though, the thing that we keep hearing is when they have those days and it's a part of their contractual time, they say if they don't use it, then they lose it in a year. And that's a piece that we're going to need to have a discussion about.
So these 10 or more days are, what type days can they use again?
They're sick days or personal days or business days that they take.
How many are they given of those days?
Ms. Algie, you want?
Annually, they get 10 sick leave days, 2 personal days that roll over the sick leave at the end of the year if they don't use those days, and 2 business days that they
So
use.
14, so they have enough leave to take 14 days. Because teachers, when sick days are often with their children, you know. So I imagine they have a higher incidence of sick leave than some other professions.
Well,
A lot
one of the
mothers-
things,
A
you
lot of
know,
mothers with children, and they take their children to the doctor, they take,
I
I mean,
one of the things that we actually asked that each of the schools consider 2 years ago, when by November we were running out of the budget that we had for substitute teachers, was that they be a little bit more observant of doctors' excuses. That became a real issue for teachers to say, well, you know, I'm not wanting to come to school with a fever, but I also don't think I need to go to a doctor to have to deal with a fever. And then you have those who look at the mental health days, and you have those, like you said, for children. So one of the, I attended a education meeting about some of these issues of accountability, and obviously we're not alone in dealing with the issue. I don't know what the percentages are, but one of the school divisions talked about how they were approaching the issue by offering a bonus at the end of each semester for teachers that had not missed any days. That becomes a budgetary matter. So, I mean, and we'll have to look at budget to see if we can do anything like that. I don't know.
You can pay for the bonus of what you would pay the substitutes to come in. Do you? To the
still get the $10 a day over a certain number of days at the end of the year, like they used to?
Yes, teachers, if they have over 120 days, they can pay for anything over.
Until they retire. And see, they know that. Some teachers that are retiring, they found out they don't get that extra money when they retire, so they use it. I know one teacher that missed every day, every Monday through, no, Tuesday through Friday, just go to school. When she got ready to retire, she had that many sick days.
We'll be coming up with something to try to work on that. That will be a goal that we will be setting, is how to improve those numbers.
Mr. Nichols, is it possible you can get us some other data, other school divisions, to see how we compare to them, or state level, if they're willing to share it with you?
I will try. It will be a matter of them being willing to allow us to have that data, unless the state's way of assessing that data comes up with a formula that they use to rank schools in one way or another. But I'll ask.
Then we can see whether or not that number is high, is in line with other divisions, or at least it'll give us something other than just our numbers.
Right.
One other thing, if it's possible, and the age range of the teachers, is it 25 to 30 miss more than 60 to 65? Because, like you said, the younger teachers would be the children, the older teachers would be retired.
So, Ms. Garner, you're asking that it be broke down
If it
by
can,
age?
I'm not
Okay,
sure
as
if
well.
it can, but I like to
It
know.
should be able to.
The discipline piece is another area that we will be held accountable for by the state, and so we're looking at this. This was an area that we spent a considerable amount of time working on with the administrative, and in large part because the areas of discipline that the state gives us to work with can be interpreted differently by administrators in different schools. So the numbers are higher and lower in one way or another. This is the overall for the high school, middle school, and elementary, the discipline areas that were the top highest. And then I went through and gave you all of the referrals from each of the schools as we looked at them. One of the things that seemed most interesting as we looked at this is that at the high school level, of course, one of the highest, the number one in one school and the second in the other school was cellular telephone use. And that's why we've come back and, saying that they can't have them to use is only creating a discipline issue. That's why we're looking with the policy and saying, let's look at ways that we perhaps can train them to better use them or teach them the most appropriate ways of using them, as opposed to just saying you can't have them at all. Because we have to look at, how many are getting suspended after so many discipline issues for use of a telephone. And then you also would note, as we look at this, particularly at the elementary level, we always hear about bullying, but as far as infractions that are being turned in for bullying issues, they're not bringing that to the attention of the teachers to be reported and held for discipline issues. It may be coming out in other ways, but as far as specific issues of noted bullying, we think that that's just something that kids are not talking about, even though they're talking with their parents and others. We're not seeing so much issues in the actual schools. So that's an area that we're working on trying to help clear up and make sure we can cover as well.
You said cover bullying?
Well, being able to identify bullying, other than when it's very obviously being seen in a classroom somewhere or in a hallway somewhere.
Like defining specifically bullying and then getting that put in?
Well, bullying is one. It's in the session, it's an area that is, but we're not seeing large numbers of reported cases of bullying to be handled in disciplinary matters.
Okay.
So that's, again, a place where we're looking at how we can streamline that issue and work with it. So that's the data for each of those areas. School climate, this comes from an actual survey that's done by the state. It's a matter of self-reporting that goes to the state, and then we get the results. This is a response on working conditions, and it gives us some data to be able to work with and work on. And so it's baseline data for us to try to build on. I don't know if you all have specific questions about it as we're looking at it. I mean, there's always, like with this one with safety, there's teachers' perspectives, students' perspectives on these areas, relationships that they have. But it does give us something that from which we can build upon as a growth model to try to see if we can work on improvement.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Bailey?
is there overall state data?
We will be I don't have that yet, but
Okay.
we will be looking
Just
for something to be able to
What our
compare.
responses were to
Right.
our regional state or whatever, just comparative data.
And that's the data that we use because it's the data that we will be reporting on, and we're try to be transparent with it. I think overall, as it was definitely a working session that the administrators had this year, because in addition to the accountability and those areas, we're looking at how we're going to be meeting the expectations of profile of a Mecklenburg graduate, and how do we build the 5 Cs into the overall plan. And of course, we're looking for as much help as we can get for that. So item B on my report tonight is I'm very pleased that we applied for, in conjunction with Halifax County, Henrico County, and Charles City County, a innovation grant that would give us options of being able to get some support from the state for professional development in those areas. And it was a very competitive grant, and we were given the notice, and I've sent it to you, that we are in receipt of that planning grant, it's $50,000 planning grant. So we will be working on that. I'm also pleased that last week I was invited to participate in the annual Farm Bureau dinner, and they've made a commitment of $50,000 to $100,000 for support of the environmental science program. That's another business partnership which is what we're looking for with each of the centers, and this is exactly the type of engagement of the businesses that we're looking for. So we're very, very pleased with that. And we're continuing. We got. I was very pleased to have our board chair come in last Friday, as we had another grant application that was sent in to the state to continue the summer camp program for the SYDC and the school in partnership. That would be a larger one for next year, so we're going to be hopeful that that will have enough success this year to be moving forward, and we continue to look for grants. I'm expecting before the end of August to hear of another one that we will have gotten successfully with the state. So those are areas that we're looking for. And as we move on, of course, the student handbook and code of conduct, we're looking at revising as we've looked at the discipline data. So Dr. Scales, you want to report on that?
Good evening, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, and the school board members. The secondary handbook and consolidated code of conduct book is pretty much ready to go. At the retreat, the principals got together with the assistant principals, and we made one proposal to try to lower some of the discipline numbers that you saw, which is about cell phones, but we're only looking at it at the high school level, not at the middle school. Middle schools will be unchanged. But what we had proposed last week for information, I'd like to have approved tonight if possible, is that there'll be 3 times during the school day where phones could be used by students, which would be before school, during lunches, in the cafeteria, and after school, to hopefully prevent students from having an opportunity that they don't have any time to utilize the phones, versus giving them some periods, this would actually allow the students to have about an hour of time where they would not get in trouble for utilizing their cell phones. That's the only that's the only significant change that we're looking at making. Everything else is, and we've actually, Dr. Carter and Ms. Swain had talked about it as far as, and their administrative teams are fine with it as far as that goes, being able to go forward with it to hopefully reduce and lower the cell phone issues. And we've also talked to Ms. Wilkerson to let her know that that we're going for, presenting this tonight and waiting to see if y'all will accept this this proposal.
Dr. Scales, I have a question on that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
You say they can use them before school, lunch, and after school.
Yes, ma'am.
What's the consequences if they get caught at other times?
The consequences are the same as what we had as far as regular offenses. Again, the first offense through fourth offense. We did not change the punishment. The punishment is still the same. It's just giving them an opportunity to have a designated time period to get it in. And when you're trying to make a subtle, we're trying to make it small. And again, we don't want to make it big because if we open up the floodgates, it's too much. But to give them a specific periods, with all the caveat to being the fact that the administration have to make sure that they have meetings with the students and parents to let them understand what the policy is and what we expect. Because another thing with the administration, we can also, if it's still not effective, they can also go back and they have to send out a written notice. They can't have the phones again. But we feel that being proactive and allowing them to know when there are the times they can utilize them will reduce the number of students having to get challenged. Because actually those numbers on cell phones could actually be tripled. If you talk about every time that an administrator, hey, put your phone away, versus having a referral involved.
Dr. Scales.
Yes, sir.
It's my opinion that we're going to open the floodgates by changing this policy. You know, I have not been a proponent for cell phones the 4 years that I've been on this board. Again, I can only relate back to when I was in school, and if we didn't have the safety features in place that we have now with the panic buttons in the classrooms, and I understand parents' fear because of the mass school shootings and stuff that we've seen across our country. I understand them maybe wanting them, but we have resources in our schools that teachers can use. If they're sick, they can go to the office, make a phone call. I think we're asking for a lot of trouble with this. And again, if we go back and we have a terrible time with it when we let them start doing it and they just go free with it and then try to change it again, it's going to be even worse. My opinion. Thank you.
And that's fine. Well, it's just like we have to change. Like when we start having issues with the buses and altercations on the buses. The policy was not in place for what we ended up changing to. If you put it out in writing, if it gets to the point, administration does have the permission and the option to be able to make a change that could be fairly significant. I mean, because that was significant, but it actually helped the situations as far as that goes with the buses. And the same thing can be done if we go forward with the cell phones. But the other thing when you talk about the cell phones, as far as the truth of the matter is that if they're used properly, that's one of your better computers that some of our students will have, even though we do have one-to-one within the classroom. But I can tell you there's one program that's one of the best programs that teachers can use quickly and effectively with a phone is Kahoot. Because teachers can customize it, because it's a lot faster. You don't have to get the computers to log in. They go to the site, and they can actually get, and it pops up a survey to see how well a student did. It's excellent for formative assessments. I'm going to tell you, because I'm a father, and my youngest daughter just graduated from under me, and she's in college. My daughter typed up a 2-page paper on a cell phone, and actually she did it on an iPod, and I didn't know she could do that. I'm telling her, when you going to get on your computer, aren't you supposed to be typing your paper? Dad, I'm typing my paper. I had to put on my glasses, look at it, and she had again, I have computers at home, I have internet, but my daughter used an iPod to type a paper, and it opened my mind up to a lot of different things. But there's an element that, again, administratively, that our administrators are willing to try to put in place that would make it where it's less tedious, less cumbersome right now with the cell phones. Because again, our number one infraction is phones. And to sit there and every time we turn around 300 times, we got kids in ISS, and ISS is full because of cell phones. Now, granted, we got other things we got to work with as well. But a cell phone is a device that hopefully, even right now, I'm not using my cell phone right now, but it's important. I got to check it from time to time. But our parents are not. Our parents want to be able to have access to their child. At least we'll give them that window. But we can actually in educating the parents. Parents, you can contact your student in the morning. If you know that lunchtime, you can contact them, or you can contact them at the end of the day. Hopefully that will, because a lot of that stuff is from outside. A lot of times the parents are texting them, okay, you got to go to the babysitter today, or you catch such and such home. Well, that's in the middle of a class period, but we can get those parents to help us out in those strategic areas. That way, when the kids do actually come out of class, hopefully they understand that you've got 3 hours. And and again, when I've done it in high school, I had to preach to the students, I'm giving you 3 hours. Don't abuse it. Make sure you understand this is so we're allowing you to do this, but please respect it. And if it doesn't, I'm sure Mrs. Swain and Mrs. Wilkerson will be coming to me to ask can we make a significant change back to the old policy, and we'll be right back with new change and getting it back in effect.
Dr. Scales.
Yes, sir.
Board members, are there any other comments to this in reference to this policy?
I'd like just to make a comment.
Ms. Bailey?
You know, there are lots of soft skills that we are teaching. Being on time and showing up. And this is probably another soft skill that gives us an opportunity to teach. When is an appropriate time to be on your phone? And unfortunately, we have to do that. And I would say that if the principals have expressed a willingness to embrace it, I think the board should give them that opportunity.
Mr. Edwards?
That's fine with me. If the principal's, they're responsible.
I do have one more comment.
I have one more.
Ms.
Garner,
go ahead.
Are the teachers encouraged to leave theirs in their pocketbooks, especially during class? Because I know
it should be, and that's something that definitely will be stressed with the with the principals. Because again, if students can't use it, if a student can't use it in the middle of a classroom, teachers can't either, and that's something that's got to be made sure to get made to be clarified as well, to respect it. So if not, kids are going to say the same thing. But right now we're going to focus on this. But I will make sure to stress it with the principals to make sure the staff are respecting the same courtesy. That's why that goes.
Ms. Garner, with that, I don't think the students are required to leave their cell phones in their book bags or in their lockers. I think the students can have their cell phones on their person.
Right.
And if the students can,
no problem.
if the students can have the cell phones on their person, then I believe the teachers can as well.
I know 3 teachers that I can text during the day and get an answer immediately.
Well,
no matter what time.
That kind of goes back to what we're trying to do now with this policy. Everyone knows cell phones are being used. Mm-hmm. It's 2019. The kids can text in the pocket without even looking at their phones. I think it gives a good opportunity for us to embrace where we're at. When I was in high school, we didn't have cell phones. The societal norm is now we have cell phones. We have to accept that. They're not going anywhere. They're just going to continue to expand. At the high school level, these kids are getting prepared for college. There are no restrictions in universities when it comes to cell phones or backpacks or any of those things. So I think it's a great idea. Personally, I believe it's a good idea to work with them when we talk about soft skills, when we talk about other things, and giving them time frames, meet them halfway. And hopefully this will be a win-win situation. It gives them that opportunity. They're going to use the cell phones regardless. Gives us an opportunity to say, we're going to work with you. And parents, not necessarily telling the parents they can contact their kids, but the parents will know during certain times the kids can reply back, which would be a good win-win situation. Mr. Honeycutt, do you have anything else?
I just have one other opinion.
Yes, sir.
You know, we've known over the 4 years I've been on this board, it was not acceptable to have cell phones with you in school. And, you know, we've had them, we keep having the disciplinary issues. So, in my opinion, you know, it was bad behavior. They weren't supposed to have it. So that's why we see these numbers or increases in things happening. So, you know, I don't want us to give in to what's next. what they're doing next, whatever it might be, and then, well, we have to make an adjustment for that. There has to be consequences to bad behavior. So that's my opinion.
Any other comments, board members? If not, thank you, Dr. Scales.
Thank you very much for the time.
And we will be voting on that tonight. The next several items are specific to finances, the end-of-the-year financials, and I'll ask Ms. Pfeffer if she will bring those to the table.
Good evening, Mr. Chairpersons, board members, Mr. Superintendent. First thing we have on the agenda is the CEP. That is the free lunch for everyone at the elementary schools. We'd like to expand that to all 4 elementary schools. It's currently at Chase City Elementary. For us to be successful in expanding it to the 4 elementary schools, we have to increase breakfast participation by 16%. I feel, Mrs. Moore feels, we are more than capable of reaching that 16% and above. For example, there's 267 students that eat breakfast at South Hill Elementary. They have close to 800 students. 16% of that would be 43 more students eating breakfast. And we do have some ideas in place that we plan to implement in the schools to make breakfast a little more accessible for everybody to grab. So we would like the board's approval to go ahead and submit that application for all 4 elementary schools.
Any questions?
If you let them use their cell phone while they're eating breakfast, they'll all eat.
Any other questions, board members? I think that was elementary school as well.
You'd be surprised.
All right.
I need to ask your permission to ask the Board of Supervisors for supplemental appropriations in the federal category. Part of a Title IV grant that was awarded this year was allocated for next year because it was not supposed to be spent until then. We had some expenditures come up that we could use that grant to buy, so we used about $70,000 of that grant that I need to get appropriated for this year so that we meet our federal category numbers.
Okay. Any questions, board members? None.
Okay, the next thing is the fuel bid. We participated in the Region 8 fuel bid, and our lowest bidders were Petroleum Traders for gas at $1.57, and James River Petroleum for heating and diesel fuel for approximately $1.92. Those were the lowest bids. And that comes in lower than what we're paying this year.
And that's for action as well?
Yes.
Any questions, board members? None.
And the presentation of the end of your bid. This is a expenditure printout that does not have the encumbrances on.
While they're handing that out,
Show you.
board members, if you have any questions, we'll be able to go ahead and ask those questions specifically versus going through the whole list.
This will show you what is approximately left in each category. And you have to remember that this is comparing this number to the expenditure budget at the beginning of the year and not the actual revenue. For example, if you look at instruction, it says we have $261,000 left. That is not correct because we didn't have revenue to meet the $30,638 million that we had projected for expenditures. We will end the year with approximately $184,000 that'll go back to the county.
Questions? None.
Great job.
Yes.
Mr. Nichols, I guess we're moving on to
Okay.
Item H.
Item H is simply policy updates that you've been given that you'll have a chance to look over. We give those each month. These will be voted on in July.
Okay. Questions, board members, on that?
Mr. Chairman, I think most of these, 261 pages, I don't know if y'all noticed that, but most of these changes are General Assembly laws that were put into place. And so the VSBA is updating our policy to match that.
Yeah, I think the board, with using the VSBA, they're aware that anytime we have new laws come out, then the VSBA will change accordingly.
So that's why this is so extensive.
Right. I will point out one of the items that is there is that the General Assembly, and this got through without notice of many of our key people. They knew that we were having legislation related to Labor Day, but they didn't know the immediate impact until we got information that we did not start opening before Labor Day previous to 2011-2012 school year, and therefore our students are due by state law now the Friday before Labor Day off. And that's state law. So they will, we had not planned on them being off on the Friday before Labor Day. And therefore, we're going to be asking that there be an adjustment to the calendar that we will be looking at today to make that time up. That's being put on us by the state. Okay. The signing bonus revision to policy difficult to fill positions addition. That is a situation where we're looking about giving an additional bonus to try to fill those. It's also looking at the whole idea of how we come back in and add science to the positions. The hard-to-fill positions are Spanish, math, special ed, and now science is what we're looking for. And we'd like to put that into policy with your vote of approval.
Any questions, board members?
Yes, I do. How do we implement that, to put that word out there that we're offering these additional monies? I mean, do we promote that via the newspaper or internet, or?
When we recruited, we had a poster that was on the table.
Ms. Aga, can you come up? A lot of people watch our videos now, so that way they
Oh, I'm
can
sorry.
actually, they can hear you on it.
So to answer your question, we put that out on a flyer that goes on our table when we recruit at all the colleges and universities. And I think just word of mouth locally.
Okay, and that's my question, since, I guess we'll still be recruiting this summer, hopefully.
Yes.
And, just locally, if we have people in the neighboring counties that are looking, put the word out there any way we can to fill in some of these critical positions.
Yes, sir. I'll ask Ms. Hatcher to put it online, and we can put it in the newspaper if you'd like to do that. I typically don't get a good response to certificated positions with the newspaper, but if you'd like for me to do that, I certainly would be happy to submit it. Any thoughts on that?
You can do that.
Well, I wouldn't think you would get much from local newspapers.
I don't really get a lot
People that
from
read
the
those
local.
already know who we are, what's going on.
I think the website would be beneficial.
Well, I'm just maybe thinking of some other schools in Division 8 in our region that maybe, somebody's looking.
Yes, sir. I will take care of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Aga.
The shortage is still very keen
I
across the
understand,
state.
yes. Oh, I understand.
And particularly in areas like those areas.
Right.
So, and then I mentioned earlier the calendar changes. Ms. Alga, I don't know if you have anything else you want to add to that. That's item J on here. It's just that we're going to ask that the day be made up right now.
Sorry. Again, for the calendar, when they made that change, and we did not have knowledge of it when we approved the calendar early on, so there are 2 days that we could consider to make up that instructional day. That would be Columbus Day, which we've never had off previously. That's October 14th, and then the other day was the Wednesday of the Thanksgiving break. So when you look at those two options, we're thinking that the October date would be the better day to make up versus the Wednesday on Thanksgiving. Those are really the only 2 days that we could make up that instructional day. So that's what the recommendation.
October 14th?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
But that's not one we're voting on tonight. We're giving you a month to.
Just information.
To look at that. It's information for tonight. Yes. Pay increase for the master's and doctorate policy, we brought that to you before. That's asking that we be able to give that increase when the degree is finished as opposed to at the end of the year. And then we have on here again the idea of you all having a chance to talk about the new school mascot.
Board members, any discussion, any questions on the new school mascot?
I have a,
Ms. Bailey?
if we go back to letter K, we had some discussion about this at the meeting last week. So right now, our policy states that if they have a master's in education, so,
You suggested that it should just be a general master's.
it should,
Or general.
it should also include those who have masters in content as well.
Content or education.
So if they
not-
come
not
from
anything.
another state, they don't have to have a master's in education to be certified as a teacher. They probably met their education requirements differently than we give them in Virginia.
Ms. Bailey, you make a recommendation that we change our policy so it's general versus specific. Is that your recommendation?
Yes, it
Okay.
is.
Well, Ms. Bailey is making a recommendation, so hopefully that, Mr. Nichols, you can bring that forward for a vote next month.
Okay?
That should give us time in the event we have new hires or people that get their masters between now and then, you can contact us.
Did you do that last meeting? Make that recommendation?
I talked about it.
She talked about it, but Paul, she mentioned it to Mr. Nichols, and that has to be brought, and we can actually do a vote on it.
Yeah, we need the
Right.
language.
The language
We do the
to be
language.
changed.
Exactly.
Okay?
Now-
We're on the mascot. Ms. Bailey.
No, I don't have anything
All
on
right.
mascot.
Any discussion on the mascot?
So, I did ask last Monday for the data from the latest survey, how it broke down and that kind of thing.
You mentioned demographics. I think you
Yeah,
mentioned something about
like,
demographics.
Student standpoint versus the community.
Mr. Nichols, do you have that?
I apologize, I did not get that
Okay.
data. But we're not voting on it tonight, so.
Mr. Nichols, you can have it, when you get it to us, you can send it to us.
I will do that.
So we'll have that information prior to action next month.
Well, I'd like to,
Go
sir?
ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say that obviously the board wasn't happy with what the choice was last week, or else we would have voted for it. So I assumed that somebody had some ideas about that.
Well, the board may not have been happy, nor did the board ask to extend it out for other suggestions. The community, students, as well as staff, has voted on the survey. We still have those numbers, the names, and I think the top name is,
Well, at this point, the last survey, the top result was the
the Mavericks.
Mavericks, yes.
And so right now, what's going to be brought to the board, it's my understanding, is going to be the Mavericks for the board to vote on it next month. Next month, we'll have an opportunity to vote it up or down.
Well, and certainly, I'm open and have asked
Well,
if the board has recommendations of ways that we might go back again to survey or get support.
Well,
I don't know what that might be, but
The board has done a survey multiple times. We've opened it up for the community to bring other names, and I think other names did come forward. We have the numbers on those names. And so this board is going to have to look at the names that are presented. The top choice right now is the Mavericks. Of course, everyone's not going to be happy with the Mavericks, but the board has to vote one way or the other.
Yeah, I get that. Just to clarify, so the other names were suggested and they were added to a new survey, and then they voted including the new names? Is that what happened?
the next to the last survey that had the three names, the results of those indicated that I don't have the exact data, I will give it to you, but the number indicated, because we looked by demographics, the students in the elementary and middle school by far were in favor of the Phoenix, and that's the one that ended up winning. The names, Phoenix, Mavericks, and Lakehawks, actually came from students and with drawings that were recommended to go along with them, although the drawings weren't used in the survey results. But those three did come from the students. And the students in elementary and middle school were the ones that put the Phoenix ahead as far as being winners. At that point, the Lake Hawks did not get a significant number of votes. The Mavericks was the one that came in second, and it wasn't far behind. They did come in second, but it was voted on by the high school students that were participating and the community members that were participating. So we took that and we said, okay, well, we'll take those two in the survey and put just those two out. And then we will give the students an opportunity to, or not just the students, but anybody in the community that takes the survey, we'll give them an opportunity to write in a selection that they might make. And that survey resulted in the Mavericks winning, the Phoenix and a write-in for Mudcats actually came out tied at 126 each.
So 126 people wrote in Mudcats.
126 actually wrote in Mudcats.
So they weren't added to the survey, those were just as a write-in?
They were write-ins, yes. And then there was also some votes that went for Monarchs, and there were some votes that went for Blue Cats, and there were some votes that went for Catfish. Those are the ones that came right off the top of my head. So cats and fish seem to be popular in the community in one form or another, but
Right.
Altogether, they still didn't outpace the Mavericks on that survey. However,
Because they were, well, because the write-in is going to be hard for a write-in.
right, that would be very difficult, but
So the question, I guess, is whether the board wants to add anything to the survey and extend it, or just to end it where it is.
Well, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Mascot is not a name.
no.
What's a mascot going to look like?
Well, that was one of the issues that
I
came.
mean, we don't pick a mascot, but a mascot is not a name. The name is mascot. Now, what's a mascot going to look like?
Well, we have a drawing.
Is it going to look like a catfish? I mean,
No, that's going to,
Oh.
after the name or after the mascot is named, then there's going to be an opportunity to depict what it looks like.
Well,
Well,
to a degree.
to a degree, yes.
To a degree,
To a degree.
because that's where it gets specific to us having worked with this marketing agency. They take what we come up with as a mascot, and they actually create renderings that nobody else has. We will own that
And we
image,
will vote on the rendering.
and we will vote
Yes.
on the rendering
So
that they come up with.
After we come up with the mascot, then they're going to do a rendering.
And for example, with Mavericks, it could be as you mentioned very well at last meeting, there's a movie and there's a show that went with Maverick.
Bart or Brett? Which
Right.
one?
And so there could be an image of a cowboy, as they were both cowboys, or it could be something that looks more like a Mustang. That was one of the things that came up with it when the name came up from the students.
But that will come before the board, and the board can look at the renderings and.
But what is a maverick? What is the definition of a maverick? It's
Well,
not a horse.
every name we come up with.
I know.
We got to look at what is it. But in this case, if the name is going to be the Mavericks, then we'll get renderings. But Mr. Ritchie did pose the idea of opening it back up, Mr. Ritchie, or what?
I'm just saying, I think that's the choice we have. We can just end it where it is, or you could put the top, you could open it back up with the.
Would you like to make a motion? See what the pleasure of the
No,
board
I
will
don't,
be.
I'm not trying to be obtuse.
No, would
I'm
you,
just-
that way, if you don't make a
This
motion.
is the last chance if anybody, because people didn't like
Yes.
it, and this
If-
is the chance to do that.
If you don't make a motion, Mr. Ritchie, then it's going to be what the survey
Right.
outcome. So would you like a motion? Would you like to make a motion?
No.
Okay?
I would like to make a motion to put the top three back out for the community and students to vote on.
What were the top three again?
Ms. Garner's made a motion that we put the top three. The top three is going to be the Mavericks,
Might be four.
the Phoenix.
And the Mudcats.
Okay.
If we did the top three, if we did the top four, it would include the Monarchs.
Oh.
What is your motion, top three or top floor?
Top three.
All right, Ms. Garner's making a recommendation that we do the top three and put it back up, put it back out another survey. That's your motion? Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a second. Any discussion? About whether or not we should do this?
I
Okay?
Real quick, I'll make it quick. I was on this committee, and, I believe that all parties have worked diligently to get this done. We're at a time where we're getting ready to put the RFP out. I think all collectively, we need to move forward. It's the same ones that do these surveys time and time and time after again. The public has had ample opportunity, so have the students. And those that have done the survey have spoken, and I think we need to move forward.
Any other discussion?
The only thing is that I hear a lot is, why do we have to have the mascot name? The school is 2 years away. You're not going to print out a mascot in the walls.
Mr. Nichols, you want to address that?
Well, the recommendation that we move ahead with the mascot and the colors that go along with the mascot comes from the architects as well as the marketing agency. They would like to put the renderings in place that would be inclusive of things that would go along with that. For instance, the naming of halls in the school, that would go along in some way with it. Being able to build a marketing strategy around some of that to build enthusiasm in the community for the new school and the things that are going to go in the new school. And the colors follow the choice of the mascot, and that becomes an important part of the themes along with the development of the building.
Okay. Ms. Bailey, you had a comment?
If we're not voting on it for the next 21 days, I don't see why we can't still ask people what they want.
I think you can always ask, but then I support Mr. Honeycutt. I think this thing has been put out there. We've done survey after survey, but the motion is whether or not we're going to extend it. It's going to be yes or no at this point. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
No.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurston?
No. The motion is carried. We're going to open up the survey again for the top three. We will have action and vote on it at our next meeting. All right, Mr. Nichols, where are we at now?
The final thing before we start taking the action is that at a legal conference recently, it was brought to our attention that most school boards are actually creating an operating procedural manual for the school board. And so we are looking into how to put one together to bring to you for your approval. I don't know that we'll have it by the July meeting, but we will begin to look at that piece of it.
Is this a conference that you attended?
No, I was not able to be at that conference. It was a legal conference, and Mr. Jeffers was able to attend, and Ms. Bailey was able to attend.
And I'm sorry, I was aloof for a minute. And this was a procedure for the school board
Yes,
members?
the school board operating procedural manual.
Such as, give an example.
I have a suggestion. Could we get to one from Chesterfield County that you were talking about and let us look at it
That's what one of the things.
first, and then we'll kind of go from there?
So,
We talked about it last week.
I wasn't there.
So
So-
when people come on that are new, they can look at something and understand
Board
how.
norms. Board norms.
so we're not going to vote on it. If we can get, Ms. Bailey had brought up, she had a business card from another school division that had board norms. Part of the board norms is talks about what are the roles, what do board members do and not do. And that puts in place, so when you have new board members that come on board, some of those board norms may be, for example, how often a board member may come to central office and have conversations with central office employees versus going through a protocol of the board speaking as a whole. That way board members will know what they can and cannot do. One of those things, I think it came up, talks about micromanaging. How it's not the board member's job to micromanage. We have to support the superintendent. That's the person that we supervise, that person, that one person only. So it is a good thing to have a board norm. That way it keeps board members on page, on board as to what they should and should not be doing. And in the event board members go outside of that board norm, then the board can have a conversation with those board members. So, Ms. Bailey, if you can get that to us,
We have already requested that information. I haven't gotten it in yet.
so you've already requested
I've
it?
requested it, yes.
Okay. The board norm will be something that the board will decide on.
Yes.
So when you get it to us, the board will have to probably have a meeting to go over it, and it will be up to this board as to whether or not we're going to adopt a board norm. It's not something that we have to do. It'll be the pleasure of this board.
And it's also not a universal board norm.
No, it's not.
It's something that you can take and look at and put in place what you feel is more appropriate for you.
You have anything else, Mr. Nichols?
No, sir, that's it.
Moving on to action. That the school board approves the personnel recommendations. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Motion from Mr. Honeycutt, second from Ms. Garner. Any discussion? If none, roll call.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill?
Yes. Action item B, Student Handbook Code of Conduct. That the school board approves the updates to the Student Handbook and Code of Conduct. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion from Ms. Bailey and a second from Ms. Garner. Any discussion? If none, roll call.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
No.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill?
Yes. Get a motion that the school board approves free breakfast and free lunch for all students at elementary schools for the 2019-2020 school year.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion for Mr. Edwards, a second for Mr. Ritchie. Any discussion? If none, roll call.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill?
Yes. Get a motion the school board approves to revise policy GCBA-R regarding the signing bonuses from $1,500 to $5,000.
So moved.
We have a motion for Mr. Honeycutt.
Second.
We have a second for Ms. Garner. Any discussion? If none, roll call.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
No.
Mr. Sturgill?
Yes. Get a motion the school board approves to add secondary science as a difficult-to-fill position.
So moved.
We have a motion, Mr. Honeycutt. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Ritchie. Any discussion? If none, roll call.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill?
Yes. Get a motion the school board approves the request for supplemental appropriations.
So moved.
Motion, Mr. Edwards.
Second.
Second from Ms. Garner. Any discussion? None, roll call.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill?
Yes. Get a motion the school board approves the participation in the Joint Region 8 fuel bid.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. Edwards, second from Mr. Honeycutt. Any discussion? None, roll call.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill?
Yes. Get a motion the school board approves the payment of the bills.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. Edwards, second from Ms. Garner. Any discussion? None, roll call.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill?
Yes.
We need D to be voted on.
Under the public content, July 4th, Independence Day holiday, July 15th, the regular school board meeting, July 30th through 31st, new teacher employee orientation. Did we miss anything, Mr. Nichols?
No, just
No?
checking on one thing. Thank you.
All right, we do not have,
Chairman, do we have a date for the new teacher dinner yet?
Mr. Nichols, do we have that date?
We do not have that date yet.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, once that date is finalized, Mr. Nichols, can you get it to the board, please?
Yes.
Anything else at the pleasure of the board? If not, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
In a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting's adjourned.
Just thank the board members for coming.